What's up, guys? Tim Little, Matt Allen. Welcome back to Tactical Bass. And today's video, I have a special video for you. We have a boat maintenance video, some tips and some tricks to help you keep your boat working and on the water.
Through the years, we've done a handful of videos about boat maintenance. Things that we do to our boats, how to buy used boats, how to buy new boats, what to look for, what to avoid. But it's been a long time since we've done some basic boat maintenance. And for a lot of people, this stuff's not basic. So we've noticed this trend the last few years. One, people have less money than they had before, right? Things are tightening up. That's reality. And with that comes the fear that you're going to break your boat because a lot of people can't afford to fix them. In addition to that, we've noticed that it's harder and harder and harder to get into a mechanic.
More people on the water.
More people are on the water. That's exactly right. And the result is that things that used to be simple can now keep you off the water for 3, 4, 6 weeks for no reason, because you can do these things. They're not complicated. We all just assume that because it's bolted to a boat, it is complicated. So today we're going to run you through basic maintenance on a motor, basic maintenance on the boat itself, and the trailer. Now, this is not everything you need to know. This is literally what Tim and I do because we travel constantly. We break stuff. We break down a lot.
Lots of wear and tear.
Learned tons of wear and tear. But we've learned how to fix these things, and we've learned how to avoid a lot of problems. And we're just going to pass as much of that to you right now as we can to help you guys stay on the water. To kick this thing off, let's start with the outboard. We'll focus there, and then if you want to do some of the other stuff, and we'll just roll.
Yeah, we're going to show you guys basically the basic maintenance that we do. We're on the road 12 months out of the year. And like I said, a lot of wear and tear. And it's a little, I'm not mechanical by any means, but we're going to run you through just basic oil change on your motor and then some other things. I mean, we're a little over halfway through the season. So just some tightening, some stuff. Kate, I'm going to run you through this stuff. So we're going to start with the oil change. We'll get that going. We'll get Matt doing that. And then we'll jump through and I'll run you through some of the other things that I'm checking all the time when I'm on the road. And then we'll finish it up, wrapping up the oil change. And
we'll probably roll under the trailer too.
Yeah.
We should look at that too.
Cool.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Today we're going to do some basic maintenance on, this is actually Tim's motor, on a Yamaha SHO 250. This motor is incredible. But whether you've got a brand new outboard like this, or you've got a simple old 1970s two-stroke on the back of a little tin boat, the concepts are the exact same. So you want to pay attention to this. A lot of people are afraid of working on outboards. Something about it being under a cowling, right? You'll work on your truck, you'll work on your other toys, but when it comes to that outboard, we won't touch them. I was the same way. Tim was the same way. As it turns out, once you pop that scary cowling off there, there's nothing scary underneath there. It's just another motor. Anybody can work on these things. So there's a couple of things that are going to mess you up with an outboard. One is oil in the motor, or lack of oil in the motor, or lack of oil in your lower unit. So the two biggest things we're going to solve today, we're going to change the oil in the motor, and then we're going to pull our prop off and just make sure that the seal on the lower unit looks good, because those are simple things that you can do, that we can do to ensure that that motor is solid, because you never want to be second guessing. I've lived that. I've lived that where I know where the fish are and I'm afraid to make the long run to get to them because I don't know if my motor's still reliable. You want that out of your head. You want to do as many of the things as you can do to ensure that your motor's solid and you can keep on fishing hard. Let's jump into it. First thing is getting the cowling off. On the SHO, we've got 3 clamps that hold that in place. After that, you just lift the thing off there. You'll notice I set the cowling on the ground, not on the boat. That's on purpose. Whether your motor's brand new or 20 years old, if that thing's got oil or grease on it and you set it on the carpet, that is never coming out. So save yourself a headache, set that thing on the ground. Now, doing the actual oil change is very simple. It's just a matter of draining the oil out of the motor, then changing our filter, then filling it back up. This is no different than an old pickup truck in that regard. There's two ways to get the oil out. You can pull the bolts to take this cover off, and then right here, there's a drain plug, and we can just drain the oil out the old-fashioned way. Or if you don't want to make a mess, and this is something you actually do on a regular basis, you can invest in an electric pump. And if we do that, it's much simpler. All we're going to do is pull the dipstick, get it out of the way, run our hose down inside that dipstick hole. We'll open on top, we'll pull the plug so that we can get a vacuum going through the motor, and we're going to literally just pump all the old oil out of here instead of draining it out on the ground and making a big mess.
All right, while we're waiting for that oil to drain in the motor, this is my new Skeeter FXR 21. And while it's fairly new, I have a ton of road miles on it. The first thing that I typically check, now I don't have the issues with this because it's a new boat, but I have it all the time in my Champion, is the rub rail. If you look down your rub rail, you'll see kind of areas sticking out a little bit. It's really easy to pop this back, take your Phillips screwdriver, tighten it down, and pop it back in. So pay attention to the rub rail. I have that happen all the time in the Champ, but obviously with the new boat, it's not a big of an issue. And then, you know, we're 8 months, 9 months into the season. I go around with a ratchet set or a socket set, a screwdriver, and I just tighten down everything. I tighten all of the Phillips, all the screws on my trolling motor. I tighten down all of the knobs on my brackets. Definitely check your plugs on your back of your electronics. A lot of those will rattle loose. So tighten that stuff down, but it's just kind of going through the whole boat with a fine tooth comb and just tightening everything down. Whether if you have shallow water anchors, you're tightening your bolts on your transom, you know, just go through and check everything, because that wear and tear, even though you're not using your boat a lot, when you're trailering a lot, it's all vibration and those things tend to loosen up. So I go through and tighten up every screw, nut, and bolt to make sure everything is tightened. All right, so we finished running through the entire boat, tightening every bolt, screw, nut. One other thing that I typically do before I ever go on the road is check for updates on all of the electronics, whether it's a trolling motor or your fish finder. Today's technology, doesn't matter what brand you're using, there's updates released all the time. So I go in, I check, see what software I'm running, and look for current updates, whether it's on the trolling motor or the shallow water anchors, whatever it is. I update everything in my network, then it's time to hit the road.
Outside of your outboard motor, the other big culprit that will keep you from traveling, going to fun places, putting time on the water is going to be your trailer. Now, trailers are extremely simple as long as you understand what you're looking for. Now, I have two different levels of what I do with my trailer. If I'm just going fishing, this is something I'm going to do every single time I go to the gas station or when I get home from a boat ramp. And that is just simply visually look inside my rim. So on the trailer, your biggest culprit is your wheel bearings. They're inside of here. The wheel bearings, 9 times out of 10, will be the issue if your trailer stops. With those wheel bearings, they're packed in grease or oil. You might have vault hubs like this, you might have bearing buddies, you might have old-fashioned dust caps, you might have nothing at all, in which case this should be very high priority for you. But the biggest thing is checking the overall condition of your wheel bearings. If we're just going back and forth to the lake near home, all I'm going to do is look at the interior of my rims, because the rear seal that's holding that grease or oil in place from the back side of the trailer is a likely culprit. If that's leaking, if any grease is coming out of there, that also means water is going in there, and it's a matter of time before you have a failure. If I see a lot of grease building up, it's time for me to tear this thing down. If I've got a major trip coming, I go a little farther than that. I'll roll underneath the trailer and actually check that seal from the backside. Again, just visually, I just want to see if there's any grease leaking around the edge of that seal. While I'm under there, I'll also, Tim already talked about going around the boat, tightening everything up. I check the bolts on the bunks. You want to make sure that your bunks are tight. You're already under the trailer, you might as well have a look. And then the last thing that we do, if it's a major trip, because again, we travel a lot. We have a lot of friends that travel with us. We also have a lot of friends that have missed trips because they're afraid their trailer won't hold up. I feel bad for them because they've missed out on some amazing fishing over some very simple stuff. So the last thing that we'll do before a major trip is just jack the boat up and just wobble each wheel. You want to check how much play is in there. You want a tiny little bit of play, but if that thing's loose, you've already got a failed bearing and you've got a nightmare coming if you try and go roll down the highway. So again, we're visually checking for grease leaking on the back side of the seal. It's easy to see whether or not it's leaking from the front. And then we're checking that the bearing itself still feels solid. With that, the motor should be done draining. Let's head back over to the outboard and wrap up that oil change. With the oil out of the motor, we can do the rest of the oil change. Put the dipstick back in place. Then we're going to pull our filter. I use a filter wrench. Just makes things easier. Sometimes they're in there tight. We'll change our filter once we get the new filter in. Just a matter of pouring oil in from the top. And we'll be done. Get this old one out. We're going to compare model numbers. I'm reading them upside down because I don't want to dump oil out, but that is the right one. We'll take a little bit of oil from the old filter. We're going to put it on the seal of the new filter just to help it get a good seat as we put it back on here. And after this is on, we'll tighten it down. And then because we're doing the oil filter at the same time, this motor takes 7.1 quarts of new oil. We're gonna pour that in the top, and this is buttoned up. Now, depending on where you are in the country, how backed up mechanics are, that right there saved you somewhere between a day on the water and a month and a half on the water for something incredibly simple. You don't have to be afraid of this. With oil back in our motor, we've eliminated the vast majority of problems. Now, if you've got an old two-stroke, obviously you're mixing oil for that motor. That's a different animal. But on an old two-stroke, changing spark plugs, checking fuel lines, they're simple. You can do all of that. Now, the only other things that are going to get you, well, I say only, there's hundreds of things that could get you with an outboard, right? But the common things, the things that you and I are going to worry about, we've got oil in that motor. It's going to be fuel, and it's going to be oil in our lower unit and making sure there's not water in our lower unit. As long as you've got that, you have done your due diligence. You can run that motor. With fuel, the only thing I do regularly is check my fuel bulbs and make sure that they're holding pressure. If that thing is backflowing and letting fuel out, so if you let your boat sit for a couple of days and you go check that ball and it's completely empty, it's time to change that fuel bulb. As far as lower units go, you can pull the screw on the side and verify that you've got oil in there, you don't have water mixed in. Generally, I don't even bother doing that. All I'm going to do is pull my prop off. So we pull the cotter pin, then we pull the nut, back everything off. We take it off in order, pull the prop off. And the reason why is there's a seal behind here. That's the most common place for a failure. There's a seal here, there's a seal at the top. But this is the one that you can check regularly. It's very common to suck up fishing line and debris, and it will get built up in there behind the prop, and that will blow that seal. So you should regularly pull these parts, pull the prop off, and just visually verify that the seal looks right and that there's no fluid leaking out of there. If there is, now it's probably time to call a shop unless you're comfortable breaking down a lower unit. We all love fishing, and a boat is a major part of that. From a bass boat to a tin boat, that boat gives you the ability to escape reality, spend time with your family, catch big fish, but it can also be a nightmare if you don't handle those little things while they're still small. This won't solve every problem that you're going to encounter on the water, but it will resolve the vast majority of them.
Yeah, we knocked all this out in less than an hour, guys. And for me, it's just having that peace of mind. When we hit the road, we want to focus on fishing and where we're going. We don't want to worry about blowing trailer bearings or our lower unit, that sort of stuff, guys. It's just that peace of mind to help you relax and travel comfortably. But yeah, less than an hour. We went through, tightened everything up, and you know, some of the tools are going to be available at Tackle Warehouse. We'll link those down below. Some of them you won't. You'll have to go by your local hardware store and get them. But always travel with a nice tool set. And guys, it's not hard. Like I said in the intro, I'm not mechanical at all. It's really easy to run through with a socket set, some screwdrivers, tighten everything up, change that oil, and you guys will be good to hit the road and catch some fish. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you learned something from this video or you like this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.